Okay, well, we are in the middle of a new sermon series, and all that is just a series of sermons that kind of have the same topic, same theme. And our sermon series right now is entitled Modern Problems. And all we're doing is we're taking a look at things that we as 21st century Americans that we might struggle with or we might face or something that might come up in our lives, and just taking a look at that and seeing, is this, we feel like this is unique. This situation, this issue, whatever the problem is, we feel like it's unique to our time, our day, where we live, but is it really? Might this be a little bit of an older problem than we might give it credit? Might this be something that maybe even Jesus might have commented on? So we're taking a look at some of these modern problems. We would call them modern problems, and taking a look at maybe the Bible says something about that. So today we're talking about money. Surely money is a modern problem. And when I say money, I don't just mean money, I mean the stuff that money can buy too, okay? Everything associated with money and stuff and having things and materialism, surely that's a modern problem. I mean, you think about it, we live in one of the wealthiest nations in the world, at one of the wealthiest times in the world. We have all kinds of new toys and gadgets, new things to spend our money on, new ways to use it. We have all kinds of new ways to make money too. New opportunities, new things that we can do to get more and more and more. Surely this idea of money and stuff, surely that's a modern problem. And everybody wants more stuff. Everybody wants, we seem to have this insatiable appetite for more, and yet we know that more often brings problems. But we still want it. Everybody wants more, and yet we know, well, I'm pretty sure that that's going to run me into trouble. Let me ask you guys this question. Has your want of something ever caused you to do something? Has your want of something, there's this thing I want, I want this bigger house, I want a boat, I want a newer car, I want this new iPhone 27 IP, or the newest, I want this thing, and your want of something has caused you to do something. Let me ask you this. Has your want of something ever caused you to do something stupid? Has your want of something ever caused you to do something that you might say, in hindsight, probably wasn't the best decision. I really haven't used that in years. It sits in my garage. I don't have any use for it. I look back on that and I think that may not have been the best use of my resources. My want of something caused me, it directed my actions and my resources to do something that I now think, that probably was kind of a stupid idea. That probably wasn't the best decision I could have made. You see, our want for more stuff can get us into all kinds of trouble. Our want for more leads us to do something that we really shouldn't have done or couldn't have done, which leads us into debt. And then debt causes all kinds of tension in our lives, and when am I going to get out of this, and what's going on with this? And then all of a sudden, you're in a position where you are filled with so much tension and anxiety and even self-loathing of, I can't believe I did this, and how could I have done this? And your want of something caused you to get into a bind, to do something stupid, to get your life off track. So our want of stuff can get us into all kinds of trouble. Our want of things can get us into sticky situations maybe. So why do we keep doing it? I mean, we know this is a problem, but why do we keep falling into the same trap over and over again? Last week we talked about anxiety. And we talked about how our anxiety, that problem of us being anxious, is caused because we want to control things. We want to control things, and when they're out of our control, we get anxious. And we talked about the solution to that is to give up control to God. That as our trust in God, as our saying, God, you are the one that sits on the throne. You are the one that has ultimate control here. I'm going to not worry because you're in charge. As we increase our trust in God, as we give up our control, then our anxiety level actually goes down. So this week, our problem is money and stuff and our want for those things. And the root of the problem is happiness. We want to be happy. And so like last week, the solution is just give up on happiness. Just be miserable, accept it. You're never going to have to worry about stuff again if you know I'm just going to be miserable. And no, I mean that's not the solution the same as last week. But here's the deal. We get stuff, we want money because we want happiness. And not superficial like, oh, that joke was funny, I'm happy for a couple seconds. We want deep peace. We want deep satisfaction. We want true, genuine happiness. We want that feeling of We want true, real happiness. That's what we're searching for. And our problem is that we think that we can find happiness in a what? We think that we can find happiness in a thing, in stuff. I want this happiness. I want this real peace, this genuine satisfaction. That's what I want. And I think if I get more, I can have it. Because when I get a little bit, I'm happy for a little while. So maybe if I get enough, maybe if I accumulate enough, maybe if I make enough, then I'll reach this point where I'm genuinely happy. We think we can find happiness in a what? And the problem is that you can't. Which, that's a pretty typical preacher thing to say, right? Like, money can't buy happiness. Everyone in here has heard that before. And of course, when the preacher says that, everyone goes, yeah, okay, yeah. But deep down, we're thinking, God, just try me, okay? Try me on this one. Some lessons are learned better from experience. Maybe I should experience being rich, and then I will see God. This is for my own good. We think that, sure, yeah, okay, money can't buy happiness, but deep down we're like, well, maybe for other people it can't. Maybe I'm the exception. And we think that. Here's the deal. I'll prove to you that you can't be happy in a what? You can't be happy in a what? Let me ask you this question. How much more would it take for you to have peace? How much more would it take for you to have happiness? And you see, the funny thing is, the answer to that question for almost everybody is more than I have now. Okay, there's no set amount, there's no bar. It's not like if I reach X numbers or this point, then I will have arrived at this deep, genuine, true happiness. For almost everyone, it's, if I had a little more than I had now, I think I'd be there. I don't know exactly what the number is, but if I had a little bit more. And you see, that's the whole grass is always greener on the other side. It's always better over there. You'll never get there. It's always, if I had a little bit more, if I could get just a little bit more, then I would be there. See, a what can't bring happiness. Let me point out something else that we all know. We all know this. We never really take time to think about it. That you know people. There are people that you know in your life. There are people in this room. There are people in our community. There are people in the world who have a whole lot more than you do. There are some people that have so much that I don't know how they spend it. Okay, I've thought about this before. If I had multi-millionaire or a billionaire or whatever, I don't even know what I would do with the money. I don't know. What do you buy? What do you spend when you get that rich? Is there some place you go where everything? I just don't even know what you do with that money. But there are people out there who have that much, and they're less happy than you are. And there are people out there who have less than you. People in your lives, in your families, in this room, in our community, in the world who have much, much less than you do. So little that you think the opposite. I don't know how you live on that. I don't know how you get by on that. If I had that little, I wouldn't know what to do. I would not make it. I don't know how you do it. And they're happier than you are. And so if someone that has a whole lot more and someone that might have a whole lot less, if this guy can be unhappy and this guy can be happy, then surely it doesn't have anything to do with what I have. Surely I can't find happiness in a what? So we want to be happy. We want to be deeply happy. Peace, a satisfaction, an authentic, I am truly alive in this moment. I am happy. But we can't find it in a what? And it might not be as modern of a problem as we think. We think surely this is a modern issue. Surely this is a struggle that people who came before, they didn't really get it like we do. We have so much stuff now. Surely people who came before didn't have this exact problem. And it's funny because one of the wisest men to ever live, Solomon, wrote 3,000 years ago in Ecclesiastes chapter 5, verse 10. This is what he said. Those who love money will never have enough. How meaningless to think that wealth brings true happiness. It seems like, and I could be reading this wrong, but it seems like 3,000 years ago there were a group of people out there who said, if I had enough, then I would be truly happy. 2,000 years ago, Jesus is a pretty wise guy. I think most of us understand that. He had a lot of wisdom about him. He may or may not be the Son of God, but man, he kind of knew what he was talking about. He said more about money than he said about anything else. More than he said about the kingdom of God, more than he said about faith, more than he said about anything else, he talked about money. As if, they didn't really understand. It's it's something that we struggle with all of our stuff and all of our things. Maybe not. Jesus actually talked about it quite a bit. We're going to take a look at one of the things that Jesus says about this problem that we have of always wanting more, of money pervading our life. We're going to take a look at Luke chapter 16, verse 14. This is what it says. This is Jesus talking here in Luke chapter 16, verse 14. He says this, "No one can serve two masters, for you will hate the one and love the other. You will be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve both God and money." Maybe some of your translations have mammon, but really a modern use of that word would just be money. You cannot serve both God and money. Jesus says a couple interesting things here. First thing he says, which he doesn't really say it, but he heavily implies it, you will serve something. Jesus doesn't say, if you serve a master, you can't serve two. No, he says, you can't serve two masters. There's going to be some kind of overruling principle. There's going to be something in your life that is going to dictate what you do, the actions you take. How much time you spend at work, what you spend your money on, if you should upgrade this, if you should get that, how you treat someone. All these things are going to be dictated by a principle in your life. You are going to serve something. Jesus didn't say if you, but he said you serve something, and it can't be two. It has to be one. You can't serve both God and something else. And Jesus seems to think that serving money, putting your life on the altar of stuff and things, that's not the way to go. Jesus is actually going to side with serving God. I mean, I know that's a surprise. Jesus is going to tell us to serve God, like big shock there. But he's going to side on serving God's the way that we're supposed to go. And outside of just preachery, Bible-y, religious, like go serve God. If you think about it for a second, that makes a little bit of sense. That God, if God made you, if God put you together, then probably God knows what's best for you. I mean, if you think about it, if God's creator, if he put you together, if he built you, if he made you, then probably he knows what it means to be truly, deeply happy, to be truly at peace, to have that feeling of, okay, I'm there now. If God's the creator, then he probably has a good idea of what that looks like in your life. And so Jesus says, you're going to serve something. Something is going to be what dictates your actions. And it can either be money or it can be God. And we've already seen that money's not going to get us there. I mean, if I run my actions through the grid of, I want more, I want this, I'm going to get this, I want to have this, that we're not actually going to get to this point of, I'm satisfied, I'm at peace, I have this deep inner happiness. But if we serve God, the idea is, well, he made you. He put you together. Maybe you can find this satisfaction over in that camp. You see, Jesus teaches that if you want that kind of feeling, you're only going to get that when you serve God. If you want to know what it means to be a real, authentic human being, you can only find that following God. So what does it look like to follow God? We want to be truly happy. We want to be authentically happy. We get in trouble when we try to get that happiness by going to stuff. So instead, let's try going to God. Let's try following God. Maybe that could be the secret to having that deep, genuine peace and satisfaction and happiness. But what does that look like? What does following God look like? Well, Jesus really put a nice little, in a nice package and put a nice little bow on it. There are more details on this, but generally speaking, you want to know what following God looks like. It's Matthew 22, verses 37 through 40. Jesus is answering a rabbi, and he says, this is what following God looks like. You must love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, and all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment. A second is equally important. Love your neighbor as yourself. The entire law and all the demands of the prophets are based on these two commandments. You want true, genuine happiness? Well, you're only going to find it with God. You can't get it anywhere else. So what does it look like to follow God? Well, it looks like this. Love God and love your neighbor. It looks like this. Love the who's and not the what's. That Jesus says you got to put the emphasis on the who's and not the what's, that the what's aren't going to give you the happiness. The stuff isn't going to give you the happiness, but the who's will, the who of God and the who of your neighbor. That Jesus says if you want to have this in your heart, if you want to be authentically human, if you want to have this deep satisfaction, you got to know God, and here's what knowing God looks like. Love God and love others. Now, this word for love in Greek is agapao. And that word, it doesn't mean I love you because you're pretty. It doesn't mean I love you because I think you're funny. It doesn't mean I love you because, you're my kid and I think I have to. It doesn't mean any of that. It means I love you because I choose to love you. It is a decision word. It is an action word. This is regardless of the fact that you're rich or poor. It's regardless of the fact that you're attractive or kind of repulsive. It's regardless of the fact that of anything about you. There is nothing about you that determines the fact that I love you. That's the kind of love that God said that's what you need to have. You want to follow me? You have to love your neighbor. You have to agapao your neighbor as yourself. You have to choose to love them. It is a big, radical word. It is a sacrifice word. Because there's going to be times where your neighbor is a jerk. And there's going to be times where your neighbor is trying to ruin your life. There's going to be times where your neighbor gossips about you. They constantly ignore you. They do everything they can to ruin your life. There's going to be times where your neighbor betrays you. There's going to be times where people in your family hurt you. There's going to be times where your friends hurt you. There's going to be times where it's not going to be easy. There's nothing in you right now that would make me want to love you. And so agapao is a sacrifice word because there's going to be times where I'm going to have to say, I'm going to love you anyway. I'm going to serve you anyway. I'm going to do for you anyway. There's no reason for me to. There's nothing in you that demands that I should love or serve you, and yet God has said, if you want to follow me and love others. If you want to follow me, you have to agapao your neighbor. And there's never a point where I can say, I'm loving you by not serving you. That agapao is big, it is a huge, it is a radical, a sacrifice kind of love. And you see, the thing is, Jesus says, you want to be authentically happy, you want to have true humanity, you want to be whole. Don't try to find it in the what's, try to find it in the who of God. And God has said, I need you to love the who of others. And the reason that this love is so big, the reason it's so radical, the reason it costs a lot at times, is because that's the only way to fight the idea of materialism. The worldview of I want more and I'm a consumer and if I just had more and thinking of people as numbers and thinking of what's as more important, that whole philosophy is everywhere around us. And it is something that we are so prone to fall into. And the only way to fight against it is to throw yourself in the direction of God. A big, radical, sacrificial love is honestly the only thing that will combat such a prevalent enemy as money. In fact, when Jesus said you can only serve two masters, isn't it interesting that he didn't say, here's the two masters, Satan and God? No, he said money and God. Because he knew that money, this idea of stuff and wanting, is such a pervasive force. It is something that we so easily slip into, of thinking of me, what can I have? Can I have more? I want more. This big kind of love is the only way to fight it. And that's why it's so big and so radical, and you have to throw yourself into it. Now, it's kind of scary. I mean, what does that look like? If someone's really trying to ruin my life, they're talking about me, they're ruining my reputation, they're intentionally trying to hurt me. What does it look like to love them? Because that's kind of scary. Is that going to work? I mean, I'm really putting myself out there. I mean, what exactly is that going to look like? Well, it's a great thing you asked. We have a great example of that in Jesus. I'm going to tell one story. There's 1,000 stories I could tell. I'm going to tell one story. This is Jesus showing incredible, sacrificial, and radical love. It's Matthew chapter 8, verses 5 through 7. This is what following God looks like. This is that deep, crazy kind of love. Matthew 8, 5 through 7. When Jesus returned to Capernaum, a Roman officer came and pleaded with him, Lord, my young servant lies in bed, paralyzed and in terrible pain. Jesus said, I will come and heal him. Isn't that incredible? Man, great sacrifice right there. Incredible love right there. Now, most of us look at that and we go, Cody, that's like average, like kind of love. I mean, it would be a big deal for me to heal someone, but for Jesus, that's like, hey, you dropped your keys, I'm going to pick them up for you and hand them to you. I mean, Jesus heals all the time. This is not incredible, outrageous, over-the-top kind of love. And the problem is because the emotion isn't written in the text. The emotion isn't written in the text. Anybody in the first century who read this would have been like, wow. Did you see that? Unbelievable. Because they would have gotten it. But the emotion isn't written in it. In fact, the emotion isn't written in it because it's so powerful. It's like this, teenage boy, he's over at his girlfriend's house. They're in the basement, watching a movie. Lights turned down low. All of a sudden, they're not really watching the movie anymore. They're not even really on the couch anymore. And then the lights come on. And there's her dad standing over him, looking at him. And you think a couple days later when he's in the cafeteria telling this to his buddies, you think that they have to go, was that awkward? Like, was that awkward? Like, was that weird for you? Like, was that strange? No, they would have been like sick to their stomachs. Like, oh, like that was so awkward. Like, I can't believe. They would have been there with him. And he didn't have to say a word. He could have just told the events of the story and they would have, oh man, like I can't believe that happened. You know, he didn't have to say that. This is the same thing. Where this is a story that's full of incredible emotion. There's just an incredible sense of tension in this story that we don't get. You see, this Roman officer, this centurion, he represented Rome and everything Rome has done with Jerusalem. You see, 60 years before Jesus was alive, Pompey, he came through the area. He was a Roman general, and he conquered Jerusalem. And he wanted to see this God that everyone talked about, the God that lived in the temple. So he went up to the temple. And of course, the priests weren't about to let this outsider, this pagan, this foreigner, get into their holy place. So they tried to stop him. And so he had them killed as he walked, and here's priests being killed in God's temple. Pompey walks into the temple. He walks up to the Holy of Holy Places, the place where only one guy, the high priest, like the head Jew, goes one day a year. And it's not like, well, he goes in there one day a year to do stuff, but, we come up here sometimes on nights and we kind of hang out in there, or like we have janitors that go in. No, I mean, there's one guy, one day a year, for a little bit of time, he goes in there. That's it. And Pompey comes up and he throws back the curtain and he looks in there and he doesn't see God, and then he goes, all right, I looked. There's no God here. And he turns out and he leaves. Kills priests in the temple, goes into the most holy place just because he wants to. Herod the Great, when he was appointed as king, Rome appointed him as king. It's not like he was just a good, Jewish boy that grew up and became king. No, Rome appointed him as king. He wasn't even a Jew. He was an Idumean. He was an outsider. He wasn't Jewish. Rome said, you're going to be king of Jerusalem. You're going to be king of Israel. Now, we call him Herod the Great because he built a lot of stuff, okay? But there was nothing great about him to the Jews. You see, he was a butcher. He killed several of his children because he was afraid that they were going to take the throne from him. So he had them killed. We got a great story in the Bible, a perfect example, not out of character, of Herod to send soldiers and go and kill a bunch of babies because he's afraid that there's a king in there somewhere. So I'm just going to kill all the children in Bethlehem. In fact, this is a story from outside our Bibles, that the day that Herod died, before that, he had ordered, whenever I die, I'm sick, I'm ill, I'm old, I'm going to die soon. When I die, I want you guys to get up, to round up all of the most beloved rabbis in the city. And when I die, you kill them. That way people are crying on the day of my death. Okay? That's the kind of guy he was. Now, that didn't actually happen. They got them all together. Herod died, and they're like, you guys can go free. We're not going to kill you. But that's the kind of guy that he was. He was a bad dude. And you know what? Rome's behind him the whole time going, that's our guy. That's our king. Rome later sent Pilate. Pilate was around when Jesus was there. Pilate, one of his favorite things to do is he would have soldiers dress up as Israelites, and they would kind of mingle about. And when Pilate gave a declaration that of something that he was doing that he knew the Jewish people wouldn't like, they'd all be gathered there, and he would give this declaration, and lots of them would start kind of getting upset about it. You can't do that. You shouldn't do that. And as soon as they did, he would give a signal, and the Roman soldiers would throw off their cloaks, and they would start beating Jewish people to death. That was his method of handling things. Rome's guy, Pilate. The Jewish people did not like Rome. And here comes this Roman officer to Jesus, and they say, I've got a servant. He's sick. Can you come heal him? And everyone in Jesus' entourage knew, every single person knew, Jesus is going to tell this guy off. He's going to look at him. He's going to go, hey, you got a lot of medics. Let them handle it. See ya. That's what every single person expected to happen. But all Jesus says is, yeah, I'll come heal him. You made my mom, when she was pregnant with me, you made her travel many, many miles to give birth to me. She was so pregnant. She could have hurt. She could have died. I could have died. You did that. Your country did that to my parents. Yeah, I'll go heal him. We want this deep, true, authentic happiness. We want this deep sense of peace and satisfaction. I want real happiness. I want to really be alive. I want to be a true human being. And we think we can get it if we scramble for stuff. But the problem is that happiness comes from following God. And God has said, if you want that true, deep happiness, it doesn't come from getting more. It actually comes from giving more. I don't think anyone would have looked at Jesus and said, man, what a depressing guy. No, Jesus was full of joy and peace. Jesus had that sense of, I know myself. And he was the kind of guy that loved his enemies. He was the kind of guy that loved radically. It's the only way to fight materialism and greed and I want more and me, is to love radically. Now, how can we make sure that we're doing that? How can we make sure that we're throwing ourselves in the direction of love? How can we make sure that we're throwing ourselves in the direction of God? Because that's what it's going to take, is 100% commitment. I can't just be like, yeah, okay, I'll increase my love quotient for the week. I'll bump it up a few notches. And no, you got to throw yourself in the direction of God. That's the only way to stand up to materialism, to this idea of me, I want more. So what are some ways that we can make sure we're doing that? Well, one of the things that you can make sure you're doing is be comfortable, realize that I want is better than I owe. I want is better than I owe. Here's why. Both of those have tension in them. You want something, you don't have it, there's tension there. I want this, I don't have it. Ergo, tension. Tension in that. There's tension in I owe too, okay? And you know what? We all know which one of those is better, okay? We all know which one of those is worse. That I owe is much worse. The tension there is much worse than I want. Now, if you can realize one simple thing, and for some reason we forget this all the time, if you can realize this one simple thing, it'll help you. You will always have the tension of I want. There will never be a time where you say, you know what? Got that new big screen TV. I want nothing else in life. In fact, I'm going to sit here and die. Okay? That's never what's going to happen. Okay? Your wife might think that, but that's never what's going to happen. You will never get rid of the tension of I want. That will never go away. So why would you add to that the tension of I owe? I want, and so I'm going to get, and in fact, I want it so bad that I'm going to actually go into debt. I'm going to owe to get this. And so you get it. So now you have I owe, and then, well, I still want this other thing too. And now you have both. So realizing I want this, and that's okay. That actually can really help you to stay away from this mindset, this all-enveloping mindset of it's all for me, I want more. To realize I want's okay, because it's never going to go away. I might as well not add something else to it. Another thing you can do to throw yourself in the direction of love, to throw yourself in the direction of God, is to be radically generous. Radically generous. Commit to being radically generous. Not just like, yeah, I'll try to give a little more. Or whatever. No, commit to being radically generous. When you commit, when you say, I will be generous, I commit to be radically generous, it does a couple things. First thing is it puts the emphasis on the who's. I'm committing to be generous to people. I'm committing to love more, to open up my home more, to give more of my time, my talents, and my money. I'm committing that because of you, because of people. So it puts the emphasis on the who's. When that happens, the emphasis on the what's just goes down. I mean, they're in direct relation to one another. The emphasis on the who's goes up, the what's aren't quite as important anymore. So being radically generous helps you there. Another thing it does is it makes you poorer, which means I really can't get the what's. I really want this, but if I get this, I can't be generous, and I've committed to be generous. That comes first. I'm going to be generous first. I've committed to be generous. And if I get this, I can't do that. So I'm going to be generous, and it looks like I can't get this anymore. It's a nice little side effect there that when you start giving more of your love, of your stuff, of your money to others, that you start having less to kind of think about me all the time. Commit to being radically generous. The last thing that you can do is seek God regularly. You see, here's the deal. Our culture is all about consume. It's all about whatever's going to make you happy in the moment. And just get it. It's all about the I want. Our culture says you can find happiness in the stuff, in the what's. And the problem is that our culture is never going to stop bombarding you with that message. Our culture is never going to take a weekend off and say, you know what, all the advertisements on TV this weekend are going to run like this. If you can't afford our product, please come get it. If not, stay home. None of the advertisements are going to start saying, the billboards aren't going to start saying, make sure you have a good savings account, and invest in that frequently. The billboards aren't going to start saying, make sure you give often to the poor. That's never going to happen. Our culture will continuously bombard us with this message of, you need to get. And since they're never going to take a break, we need to continually seek God. Because that worldview of get, that mindset of I need more stuff, I want this, that can seep into our life without us even knowing it. I mean, we swim in it, we live in it. And so to continually seek God, and what that means is continually go to Him in prayer. Make a habit of praying. Make a habit of reading the Bible. You do those things not because it's like some magic wand wave thing, or not because it's like I'm going to read the Bible because I'm going to learn something new every time. That's not necessarily the case. You do things like pray and read the Bible so that you can have this mindset of God, so that you can be in this worldview of others first, love God and love my neighbor. Seek God regularly because our culture will never take time off. So you have to make a habit of running after Him. Our desire for money, our want of more, comes because we want to be happy. Genuine, deep, personal happiness. I want to feel peace, to feel satisfaction. And we try to find it in the what, and we get in trouble. But Jesus says you're only going to find it in the who, and that who is God. And you have to follow Him. And God says, you know what? You were designed to love. You were built to love. If you want this deep, genuine satisfaction, you have to love radically. Put the emphasis on the who. Whether the who be my best friend or my worst enemy, that until you begin to love radically, you will always start to slip into the me, I want more mindset. Who are you going to follow? And it's hard. I don't know if this is going to work. I don't know if this is how it's done. It's hard. But God says, I want the best for you. I want you to be happy. Now, do you trust me when I say that? I want you to be happy, and I want you to love in such a way that you're going to have to sacrifice. Now, do you trust me that those two things go together? Because we don't think they do, and we're worried. But God says, I want the best for you. I want you to have life abundant. And that means you need to love sacrificially. Now, do you trust me that that works? Do you trust Him? Would you pray with me real quick? God, we are just so grateful for all that you've done. God, you have just given us so much in the way of your Son, Jesus, in the way of salvation. God, you have loved us radically. And so, God, we just pray that we can also find that example. That, God, that we can draw strength from that. That we can figure out how to combat this culture of more, of I want with your radical love. God, we know that that's the only way to find true happiness. And so, God, we just pray for the strength to do that. It's in your Son's name that we pray. Amen.